That was Naivety by A Day to Remember here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and please stay tuned until noon for the news, the weather, a short break, and then GameBabble Live, our video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. So please stay tuned and look forward to that. Until then, next up we've got From the Inside by Hollow Point Heroes here on 89.5 FM. Thank you so much for listening. Currently, it is 60 degrees here on the campus of Florissant Valley Community College. I'm Jell with your noon news update. In local news, in St. Louis, Missouri, 2 men are hurt after they were attacked by 3 people with a metal bat in St. Louis over the weekend. Police say the attack happened early Sunday in the 1100 block of Hodiamont Avenue. One of the victims was critically injured, while the other was hospitalized in stable condition. 1 man was arrested. Eat Right Diner is set to reopen Thursday. The Eat Right Diner in downtown St. Louis is set to reopen this week. The new owners plan to begin serving customers again Thursday. The eatery near Choteau Avenue and South 7th Street shut down in October because of problems with the structure of the building. Thursday is the Cardinals' home opener. And novelist Ridley Pearson receives star on St. Louis Walk of Fame. Ridley Pearson will always be remembered in St. Louis. The novelist received a star on the St. Louis Walk of Fame during a ceremony yesterday. The star is east of the Peacock Loop Diner. Pearson is known for writing crime fiction, the popular The Kingdom Keepers series, and Peter and the Star Chasers. In national news, attorney Alex van der Zwaan will serve 30 days in prison after he admitted lying to federal investigators. It's the first sentence to be handed down in special counsel Robert Mueller's Russia investigation. Van der Zwaan is a Dutch citizen who worked with the Trump campaign officials Paul Manafort and Rick Gates in Ukraine. President Trump is calling for a caravan of Central American immigrants to be stopped before reaching the U.S. border. More than 1,000 people have been walking north through Mexico for over a week now, hoping to seek asylum. Trump tweeted this morning, "The big caravan of people from Honduras now coming across Mexico and heading for our weak laws border had better be stopped before it gets here." EPA Chief Scott Pruitt says getting rid of Obama-era rules on vehicle fuel efficiency will help grow jobs in the U.S. The prior administration's aim to push average fuel efficiency to more than 50 miles per gallon by 2025. The EPA is planning to get rid of the regulations. Speaking at the EPA today, Pruitt called those standards unrealistic and unnecessary and not cost-effective. And former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe is freezing a GoFundMe page for his legal fund. That's after the page raised more than $500,000 in donations. McCabe was fired last month, just before he was set to retire and collect full benefits. He is expected to sue the government. His firing was recommended by a former President Obama appointee within the Justice Department. In the weather, today, we've got some thunderstorms and wind in the the evening, with wind going up to 21 miles per hour, so look out for that. We're looking at like a 90% chance of precipitation. We're going to get some rain. Anyway, high of 62, low of 27. Tomorrow, though, it'll be sunny, supposedly, but with a high of only 43 and a low of 30. Thursday, it'll be partly cloudy, with a high of 56, a low of 38. Friday, cloudy, high of 41, low of 24. And Saturday, partly cloudy, with a high of 40 and a low of 28. So today's the warmest day for a while, and it's nice out there. Wish it could kind of stay nice, but, c'est la vie. Anyway, this currently is 60 degrees here at KCFV. I'm Jell, and this has been your noon news update, but please stay tuned to 89.5 FM, KCFV The Wave, because after a short break, I will be back with GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. So please stay tuned. Until then, though, here is Untitled by Tony Brown, here on 89.5 FM, KCFV The Wave. Thank you so much for listening. That was Untitled by Tony Brown, here on 89.5 FM, KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. That was a good little instrumental break song. Anyway, Thank you so much for listening. I'm your host, Jell, and this is GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. So we like to kick the show off by talking about what came out this week, what's coming out next week, and what anime are in theaters. So, starting with the PlayStation 4. This week, Crisis of the Planet of the Apes VR, Deadland, Epic Dumpster Fire Redux. I should look that up. Infernium, Island Time VR, Minute of Mice and Sand Revisited, and The Adventure Pals. And then tomorrow, Danganronpa hits, which is an old top-down shooter that is inexplicably disco-themed, Metropolis Lux Obscura, and Raiders of the Broken Planet Hades Betrayal. Raiders of the Broken Planet is actually kind of interesting. It's made by the people who did Castlevania Lords of Shadow, Mercury Steam, and it's a very nice-looking AAA-esque four-player co-op third-person shooter that they've decided to sell digitally and episodically. It's a kind of neat idea, but I had some beef with it. There's a free first episode if you want to play it, but I think you actually need a full crew of 4 people all playing different characters in order to actually start multiplayer, and that was a problem. Anyway, day after tomorrow will be the, I'm going to guess, limited run physical release of Bunny Must Die, Chelsea and the Seven Devils, which is a bit of a side-scrolling Metroidvania classic. Flight of Light also comes out on the 5th, along with Impact Winter, Raining Coins, and the King of Fighters 97 Global Match. And on the 6th, we have Enigmatis 3, The Shadow of Karhala, and Rememoried. Moving on, Xbox One, what you getting? Well, today, the Xbox One got Minute, Terra Online, The Adventure Pals, and World of Tanks War Story. On the 4th, Danganronpa, Metropolis Lux Obscura, and Raiders of the Broken Planet Hades Betrayal will also be hitting the Xbox One. 6th, we have Dead Ahead, Zombie Warfare, and Enigmatis 3, The Shadow of Karhala. And then on the Switch got Penny Punching Princess and The Adventure Pals, along with Metropolis Lux Obscura. And then day after tomorrow, the Switch will be getting Arcade Archives Neo Geo Samurai Showdown 3, Animated Jigsaw, beautiful Japanese scenery, and Arcade Archives Ninja Kid, which is not related to the NES game Ninja Kid, along with Infernium and Johnny Turbo's Arcade Bad Dudes vs. the Dragon Ninja, which, cripes, I almost want to have that released for meme value. Moving on, Octocopter Double or Squids, Sally's Law, Slingming, Super Rocket Shootout, and Urban Trial Playground. And then on the 9th, I guess that's next week, but yeah, I guess the Bunker on the 9th. Anyway, 3DS has gotten, we'll be getting Alter World on the 5th. On the Vita, Penny Punching Princess and Sir Eats-a-Lot were released. Tomorrow we get Metropolis Lux Obscura. And then on the 5th, Bunny Must Die, Chelsea and the Seven Devils, and King of Fighters 97 Global Match. Moving right along, what's coming out next week? Well, on PlayStation 4, Call of Duty World War II The War Machine, I assume that's some DLC. Extinction, Masters of Anima, Owlboy, which I've heard nothing but good things about. A Regalia of Men and Monarchs Royal Edition, Starlit Adventures, and Super Daryl Deluxe, along with Rogue Aces. The Xbox One will be getting Extinction, Masters of Anima, Owlboy, Bomb Slingers, Deep Ones, an Xbox One port of Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice, which I've heard very good things about. It's from Ninja Theory. I don't really like them. They're the makers of Heavenly Sword and DMC, but a lot of people really liked Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice, especially because it was sold at below full price, so that was very nice. Also, Ys Origin will be coming to Xbox One, and if you're an Xbox One person, I'm just going to tell you I friggin' loved that game. Definitely gets my recommendation. I played it on PS4 and just fell completely in love with it. controls so good. Also, Regalia of Men and Monarchs Royal Edition will be hitting Xbox One, along with a game called Earthlock. On Nintendo Switch next week, I mentioned The Bunker on the 9th and on the 10th, Masters of Anima, Super Daryl Deluxe, then Bomb Slinger, then Burly Men at Sea, followed by Regalia of Men and Monarchs Royal Edition, Rogue Aces, Streets of Red, Devil's Dare Deluxe, and Word Search by Paugi. Okay? 3DS isn't really getting anything next week, and the Vita is getting Rogue Aces. So that wraps up our new game releases for this week and next week. A little bit drowdy, but that's okay. Anyway, as for anime in theaters, you want to talk drowdy, pretty much all we have is The Cat Returns as part of Studio Ghibli Fest 2018. It will be in theaters April 22nd dubbed, April 23rd subbed, and April 25th dubbed. And that's about all we're really seeing for April. I think I saw a few things for May. But yeah, no, that's the anime in theaters. So that wraps up our anime in theaters and new game releases rundown. We'll go take a quick break and kick you back to the music. Next up, we got Heights by Illphonics. And when we get back, on to the video game news. So I'll see you there, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening. Here's Heights by Illphonics. That was Heights by Illphonics, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Anyway, welcome back to GameBabble Live. I'm your host, Jell. This is GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. We just did our new game releases and what anime are in theaters, which is just The Cat Returns at the end of the month as part of Studio Ghibli Fest 2018. Now, on to the news. I guess, one of the bigger news pieces this week is the fact that there has been a purportedly, admittedly it was released around April 1st, so the veracity of this, always a little iffy with leaks, but supposedly there has been a leaked Pokemon Switch image, which has people on edge because, oh no, it just looks like a port of the 3DS game, and I'm like, yeah? Did you expect something else? Because okay, let's back up a little bit. Pokemon, obviously, popular series. Nintendo, pretty much phasing out normal portables in favor of the portable console hybrid, like the Nintendo Switch, which is a really, really good move for them because portables have always been their strength, and it's always sucked that their resources have been split between portables and consoles. There were so many 3DS games I wish had been released on the Wii U, and so on. So rather than splitting their development resources, focusing everything on a single console portable hybrid, really good call for Nintendo. And that meant that, all the future Pokemon games are kind of going to have to be on Switch, and they're okay with that. And this makes a lot of people happy because it means we're finally going to get a console Pokemon game, which is something we've all wanted for years, decades even. And now we're getting it, but people are like, hey, this doesn't look... The screenshot literally just looks like a port of Pokemon Sun and Moon, to which I'm like, yeah, because the Switch came out at almost the exact same time as Pokemon Sun and Moon. So a lot of people were like, I wonder if they'll do a Pokemon Sun and Moon for Switch and call it Pokemon Star and make it like the third entry for that series. Like you had Pokemon Red and Blue, and there was also Green. Oh, technically it was Red and Green and also Blue. You get the idea. Fire Red, Leaf Green, or Fire Red and Leaf Green didn't have a third entry, but you had Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. That kind of thing. Diamond, Pearl, Platinum. Like that. So we were expecting them to do one and call it Pokemon Star, and then they released Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon before that, but still, the rumor had always been Pokemon Star. And I'm going to say if it's coming out soon, yeah, that's what I expect. I mean, it's to make a really console quality, super pretty Pokemon game,
That's going to take a lot of time and effort, and it's not something that could be out this year or next year. I very much expect the first console Pokemon game to just be Pokemon Star. I expect it to be an enhanced port sequel weird thing to Sun and Moon, just, port of the 3DS game. And you know what? For a starter, that's good. That's fine for your first one, especially if it comes out, and this is the important thing, if it comes out soon. I expect Nintendo to, if this is a port, I expect Nintendo to announce it at E3, or just before E3, around the E3 time zone. And I expect it to come out probably in September or October, certainly before Christmas. March 2019 at the absolute latest. But I would actually expect it pretty soon if it's just a port. If it's not a port and they're actually doing something fancy, it's probably going to be, at least another 2 years before we get that. And yes, I would certainly expect a console Pokemon game to be at least graphically on par with Pokemon Battle Revolution on the Wii, which was the most gorgeous game on Wii. It's really surprising how good that game looked, even though it was this very bare-bones Pokemon Stadium game. Anyway, that's what I got on that one. I know a lot, this week it's a lot less of the quick, snappy news comments and a lot more longer, more discussy ones. So next up on our news list, Shantae Half Genie Heroes final version will be hitting May 8th. I believe they're calling it the Ultimate Day 1 Edition or something stupid. Point is, it'll be a new boxed release for PS4 and Switch that has the game and all the DLC content. And as such, yes, costume mode is nearly complete. It is the last stretch goal from the Shantae Half Genie Hero Kickstarter. And it is going to feature 3 different costumes, Ninja Shantae, Beach Shantae, and Mighty Switch Force Shantae, all 3 of which will have their own what-if storylines. So and will, actually mix up the gameplay and play differently, with the Mighty Switch Force costume actually being a full-on crossover with the game, and it's going to have, Risky Boots and Roddy Top dressed as hooligans. It's going to be great. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And I think that will be, that'll be a good time. That'll be good times. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break right here, looking at the time. And then when we get back, well, we've got plenty more video game news to talk about. After these smaller ones, we're going to talk about Sea of Thieves. And, there was certainly some surprising developments with the PlayStation VR last week. So you might want to stay tuned for that. Until then, here is I'm Important by MZ007 here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening. That was Yo Thang by Oh Boys here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell. Welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show that airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. So, moving right along with the random, slightly longer video game news, M2 is releasing a new retro shoot-'em-up called Ninja Soldier. Supposedly, the story is that they were going through their warehouse and found some old design documents from the 80s and decided to make an old-school game. Now, this was announced around April 1st, and the whole we found old design documents thing could be true, but could also easily be completely fake. But the game is real and very retro style. And when I say retro style, I mean legitimately. M2 is a kinda awesome company. You've probably never heard of them, but they're basically the Japanese emulator crew. The really, really good one. On 3DS, you could get a bunch of Sega games with a 3D effect. Yeah, they handled all those ports. Back on 360, they did a bunch of Xbox Live Arcade ports of classic Sega games, including the 360 PS3 port of Sonic the Fighters, where they put the game, in HD, they upgraded the textures, made them look really nice, and they went the extra mile, not only to put in, good, surprisingly good netcode. But actually, like, they put in and hacked in the bonus characters, like Honey the Cat, which is actually a guest character from Fighting Vipers, was in the data for Sonic the Fighters, but was never playable. And they were like, nah, hold start on Amy Rose, you can play as her now. And even though people were able to hack that character into be playable in emulators, they never got her 100% functional. Like, her pigtails wouldn't show up or her eyes would act weird. No, M2, they got it working. You play Versus mode, you could do Metal Sonic and Eggman. So, M2 is known for going the extra mile. They also did the Konami Rebirth games on WiiWare, which were really good and highly underrated. I love Castlevania The Adventure Rebirth, and Contra Rebirth is legitimately my favorite Contra. But the thing that puts them into mind-blowing territory was Fantasy Zone 2. See, while back, Japan only, PS2, they were doing a Fantasy Zone collection. And Fantasy Zone, it's an old, weird, brightly colored shoot-'em-up from Sega, and there was a Fantasy Zone 2, but it was Master System exclusive. And a lot of people always wondered, what would it have been like if Fantasy Zone 2 had an arcade release? So M2 went and made that a reality, and they recreated the game as though it were a System 16 arcade game that would have come out back in the day. However, come to find out later, they did not just, like, do the indie thing where, oh, we do some pixel art and say, hey, look how retro this is. No. They actually programmed the game on the System 16 hardware. They did a special arcade release of the Arcade Fantasy Zone 2 as a promo, really running on System 16 hardware, and that is amazing. Actually going back and programming a game for arcade hardware from 1985 just to make it authentic. That is something special. So, Ninja Soldier is going to be very legitimately retro. Also, M2 is doing that Dan Gun Fever on release that'll be kind of overpriced, but chock full of, like, bonus things, like, has 5 different soundtracks. Pretty tempted to get it, to be honest. Anyway, moving right along for other obscure releases. April 1st, the first anniversary of its announcement, Fighting EX Layer has revealed their final characters, Hayate and Sanane, who is just Nanase, but she looks different. They changed the name probably for some convoluted reason. If you haven't been keeping up, Fighting EX Layer started as an April Fool's joke. It was literally Street Fighter EX, if you remember those games, with Skullomania and Pulamperna and Volcano Rosso and all them. Yeah, it was literally Street Fighter EX minus the Street Fighter characters. The thing was, they actually made the game. They had a 3-character beta version, and they were hoping if they tried to sell it as an April Fool's joke, enough people will go, wow, I totally want to buy that game, that it would be worth making. Well, enough people said, wow, I totally want to buy that game, that it became worth making. It's probably going to be a relatively cheap download. I forget if they announced a price or not. I'm not allowed to say it on the air anyway. But I think it's going to be a relatively cheap download. They did do a beta test for the netcode, and it is coming very soon. They actually wanted to release it on the 1-year anniversary. They wanted to release it on April 1st. Obviously missed that date, but it is coming very soon because they have all the characters in and playable that they're going to have. But because they have announced, okay, we want to add more characters, but we effectively don't have money. The company that makes this game, Arika, is very small, and they're like, if the game sells well, here's what the next 3 characters are. And the next 3 characters are Pulamperna, Area, and Volcano Rosso. They showed the character designs. They look phenomenal. And, yeah, that puts me in an awkward spot because the entire reason I play the EX series is Pulamperna and Area, and there is no guarantee they're going to be in the game. The game is going to have to sell well, and I don't know if this is going to sell well or not. It's going to be a very grassroots push. I hate to say it, but a lot of this is going to be on Max's shoulders. The fighting game streamer, Maximilian, he loves the Street Fighter EX series. It has definitely grown on him, and he's been pushing Fighting EX Layer relatively hard. And he's going to be responsible for like 90% of this game's sales. Let's just be completely honest, because no one's going to be talking about fighting EX Layer. It is going to be entirely grassroots to get this thing to sell at all. But I am very excited to pick it up. Sanane is a very good redesign of Nanase, makes her look way cooler. So, yes, I can use her until Aria and Pullumperna are out. Either her or Alan Snyder, because yes, Alan Snyder and Blair Dame are back. Those were the characters that were only in Street Fighter EX1 and Fighting Layer and weren't in EX2 and 3. Well, they're back. So that's nice. The only downer is the fact that Fighting EX Layer doesn't play anything like Fighting Layer, which is a really cool game. Moving right along, though. Arcade Archives Punch-Out is here on the Nintendo Switch. And this is kind of exciting because it is the first ever home release of the Arcade Punch-Out. So this is kind of a thing that's been a problem for Nintendo. Nintendo did release a bunch of arcade games in the 80s, and they did NES ports of them, and they've just been porting their NES ports over and over and over again. With Punch-Out, it was generally an improvement, but different. But then, you've got other games like Donkey Kong. Nintendo's been porting Donkey Kong over and over again with a missing stage for a while. Well, now we've got these Arcade Archive games, and Nintendo gave them the go-ahead that as long as they're Switch exclusive, they can port Nintendo games. And so they have ported Arcade Punch-Out now, which can be played in vertical mode for the full effect, because the actual old Punch-Out arcade game had a weird setup where it had two different screens, one on top of another. Makes you wonder why they didn't put it on DS or 3DS, really. But now it's on Switch, and you can flip your Switch vertically and play it like that. I can't comment too much because I have not picked it up. But yes, the original Arcade Punch-Out, after all these years, finally has a home release. Which does make us wonder where the heck the Arcade Donkey Kong is, because I don't think they've released that yet. They did regular Mario Brothers, though. Moving on. Sonic Mania Adventure, a series of cartoon shorts, is now available on YouTube. Arc Systems Works is bringing back an old pre-Guilty Gear RPG dating sim from the Sega Saturn called Wizard's Harmony, now known as Wizard's Symphony. Not a whole lot is known, except I think the characters are designed by the Puyo Puyo guy. They said the character designer's name was Mu, and the only Mu I know is Mu Nitani of Puyo Puyo fame. I mean, other than Master Mu. But moving on, we have the last of these short news announcements. Dragon Quest VR has been announced for Namco's VR Zone Shinjuku because they enjoy taunting me. Yes, a VR Dragon Quest experience, or everything I ever wanted, will be coming to the Namco VR Zone. The VR Zone Shinjuku is basically a Namco VR arcade. It's all running on HTC Vives. They have a bunch of exclusive games, including like a Mario Kart VR, an Evangelion VR, Dragon Ball Z VR. They have a bunch of games like that, and I'm just sitting here going, please give me a PlayStation VR port. I need this, please. It's a thing. It is such a thing. So there you go. That has been a lot of the new news and releases for this week. We are going to take, I guess, another break. And then when we come back, we will discuss the complete mess that is Sea of Thieves. Because, oh, buddy, has that gotten spicy recently. So yeah, let's take a break. Here is Wash Away by Troubadour Dolly, here on 89.5 FM, KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening, and please stay tuned. Hello, this is 89.5 FM, KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and that was Blood in the Water by Grandson, here on 89.5 FM, KCFV The Wave, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. And as I said before the slightly longer than expected break, let's talk about Sea of Thieves. So, Sea of Thieves, new game from Rare. Microsoft has been hyping it up for like 3 years. It finally comes out, and it has turned into a disaster, often nicknamed No Man's Sea for good reason. And more information has come out. Last week we mentioned the fact that there was no penalty for dying in the game. You know, I should probably recap what it is. Sea of Thieves, the idea is that it's a pirate game. You play online with up to 3 other friends, and you get on a pirate ship, and you go around, and you fight skeleton pirates, and collect treasure and stuff. That sounds like a good time, except the game is severely lacking in content. The ship sailing's really cool, but then, like, all you do is go to island, shoot some skeletons, and collect a treasure chest, cash it in. It's actually really awkward, because you don't even collect gold. You get gold from collecting a treasure chest and bringing it back. You can't actually open it. It's very weird. And I've been, I admit I don't own it. I've had friends trying to convince me to buy it, and I've just been watching this thing stumble around, because, it's just been lacking in content. And last time we tuned in, there was no penalty for dying in the game. You could just respawn over and over again. They were like, and the devs said that they were going to put in a death tax, where every time you died, you had to pay the ghost ferryman to resurrect you, depending on how you died, with no penalty for PvP. And I look at that and I'm like, well, that's backwards. It was just going to be a penalty for PvE, and I'm like, no, the way it should work is that you get killed in PvP, you drop some of your gold so people can kill one another for their gold. It's a piracy game. And one of the best parts of the game has been just PvP combat. But the devs are apparently completely out of touch, because they're like, no, we want to prevent griefing in a pirate game, where literally everyone agrees the best part of the game is the griefing. Boy. But now we have a former artist who worked on the game, who didn't ask me anything on Reddit, and came out and said that they've been complaining about the lack of content for years now, at least 2 years. He was working with them for 2 years, and in that entire time, they were working on the one boat model. He was like, this is the slowest developed game I have ever seen. It took them more than 2 years to make one boat. There was way too much meddling in it, with people just trying to overly perfect things, and it just didn't really work. And despite the fact they took 2 years on the boat, most of that time they apparently didn't know how anchors work. Somehow anchors were originally going to be DLC, and they were kept in like a box on the back of the boat. And it's like, okay, you're not going to look at how a real boat works and how the anchor's supposed to work? Like, that was apparently an issue. So they didn't have the time to do a Google image search for pirate ship and how it's supposed to, how boats are supposed to work. But they did rent out a movie theater for a private screening of the Goonies for the game. That helped. Nice. Fun day. I agree, but, I think you might have some problems with your priorities, Rare. And on top of that, though, apparently for the entire game, it really is just grinding the same 3 quests over and over again. And someone has finally reached max rank, but they cheated, and a lot of people are angry about it. How did they cheat? Well, they're a streamer, and they had all the people who watch their stream help them. They're like, hey, we're going to try to make it to max rank. Let's all team up and work on this. Which, it's like, it is cheating, but also kind of cool that so many people could band together to try to get this guy to max rank, because now we know what max rank is like. There is actually some endgame content involving, like, a secret tavern full of ghost pirates and some extra quests there that you only get when you reach max rank, but apparently the trip to max rank is a slog the entire time. And it's really funny listening to people talk about this game, because, the game is from Rare, who back in the day, they did Donkey Kong Country, they did Banjo-Kazooie, they did a bunch of great games on N64, and everyone's like, oh, they have such a good track record. And I'm like, do they? You sure? Because, I'd like you to name me one good game that Rare has made after being bought out by Microsoft. Because that was the thing. Star Fox Adventures was their last game with Nintendo, and then they got bought by Microsoft, kind of partway through development, which is why, like, half that game got cut. And ever since then, they haven't really produced much. What was their first game they did on Xbox? Grabbed by the Ghoulies, which was, And then, let's see, what after that? They did Conquer Live and Reloaded, but that was just, an enhanced remake port thing of a game they had already made. Then you get to, like, Cameo Elements of Power and Perfect Dark Zero, which were kind of Viva Pinata was alright. There you go. Viva Pinata. There was Diddy Kong Racing DS, which that was nice, but again, just remaking one of their old games. Yeah, that Viva Pinata was good. Then they did Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, which was Then they did Connect Sports, which was Wii Sports, but overpriced. And Connect Sports Season 2, same thing. Connect Sports Rivals, which was like Connect Sports, but worse. This is the problem that we're having here. Rare hasn't really been putting out a lot of very impressive games under Microsoft. And admittedly, we already know most of the staff left. Like, a lot of the people that made Rare great quit when they got bought out by Microsoft, and it's, people have just been leaving Rare in droves. The question is Rare even Rare anymore? How much of the original Rare team is even left there, and how much went off to go do their own thing? I don't think people generally think about that very much. I know there's a lot of loyalty for Rare. I know there's a lot of people that really love Rare, but the truth of the matter is, they are they're not I don't think they're the same company that everyone fell in love with, and I don't know if they can really produce the same kinds of games. So there you go on Sea of Thieves. So during that lengthy break, apparently some random guy named Sully showed up out of nowhere. It was like, hey, I want to be on the show, talk video games. And I'm like, okay, let's talk video games. Let me hit your mic. Sup?
Yeah, getting the mic adjusted is a bit hard, but excited to be on here. I was been on the radio a few times with Arcanine, and I was on the morning show last Friday.
Good times.
But I'm actually probably most excited to be on here. While you cover a lot of Japanese console-like games, Switch, Nintendo, all that, I mainly look at the PC, mainly.
And that is something I kind of need help in, so he might wind up being my sidekick to cover PC games. That could be helpful.
Yeah, PC is hard to cover, sort of, because, as you said, a massive influx of indie gamers go on PC and make all of these amazing games, such as Hollow Knight. A few other ones may include... what are some really good indie games that came out for PC lately? I can't think of a lot right now. I've been stuck on Hollow Knight recently. I've been playing a lot of it. And it is actually getting a Switch port coming sometime this year. Relatively soon, they may say. Maybe summer, fall. So I think that's something really to look forward for Switch players, as it is an amazing game, and those who can't afford a PC enough to run it and already own a Switch can have this amazing experience of a game.
Indeed, and like one of the other things, I feel really bad about the fact that I can't cover new PC releases when I do my new releases this week and next week. And I just counted, and yeah, for the 2nd of April, 29 games are listed to have come out on PC on that one day. And then, cripes, the third, that looks like more than 29. The fourth, that looks a little less than 29. Yo, there's probably like 100 games every week released on PC. So if I actually sat here and listed every single one of them,
that'd just be the entire show.
It would be the entire show. And because, like you said, indie games, lots of people making great indie games, and lots of people making garbage indie games.
That's very true. Let's talk about that for a second.
Let's.
The Steam Greenlight needs severe upkeep. Like, severe. The amount of garbage content that gets uploaded on their daily, just as jokes almost, it really makes me quite angry almost. It's like, imagine... So, a great PlayStation console example would be Life of Black Tiger.
Mm-hmm.
That horrendous game. It really doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? It's made for the PS4 Pro, and yet it looks like it has pretty much N64 graphics with even worse gameplay and controls than practically anything released for it.
Yeah, Life of Black Tiger is relatively infamous, but I'm always, whenever people want quality control on PS4, I always say no, because Sony and quality control do not go together well. They
really don't.
Yeah, most of this stems from what they did back on PS2. Sony of America, I need to clarify, Sony of America's quality control said that if you released a game, when you release a boxed game, it, number one, must be dubbed if it has over a certain amount of voice acting, and number two, no 2D games sold at full price. And this severely hurt a lot of things. That was why Capcom pretty much gave up their 2D fighting game division, because, for better or for worse, if you remember the Street Fighter Anniversary Collection that had Street Fighter 3 Third Strike and, a version of Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo that was even more enhanced, that was, released in America for, I want to say $30?
Yeah, but it totally wasn't released at a good price at all.
Yeah, and in Japan, those were almost full-price releases, and the two games were sold separately. And so, yes, we got a good deal, but Capcom kind of felt like they got screwed, and they were like, well, we can't make money off of 2D games, and everyone laughed Capcom Fighting All-Stars off the face of the planet, literally. And so that resulted in them making, one more 2D game where they were like, okay, let's try to make what we can sell in that budget, and that was Capcom Fighting Evolution, which was a disaster, and so they pretty much got rid of most of their fighting game crew, and now Capcom has to license that out. The Tales of series, I always vouch for the 2D Tales games, and that was another disaster. But, yeah, because they didn't get to release any of the 2D Tales games in America because they were 2D and Sony wouldn't allow them, so the series had to go to 3D, where I don't think it works as well. But one of my favorite examples is with the voice acting, because that has led to some really dumb things. Like Arcana Heart 1, it went over the voice acting limit, and Atlas was like, we're not dubbing this game. So what they did instead was they cut out some Japanese voice acting to get it under the limit. So having less voice acting makes your game a higher quality, according to Sony of America. But the other hilarious one, and I highly recommend everyone look up some footage of this game, is a game called Chaos Wars.
Oh, I believe I've heard of this.
Yes, Chaos Wars was a crossover strategy game, and most of the games crossing over were obscure Japanese strategy games themselves that had not yet gotten any sort of U.S. release. And so it was a very, very niche game released by a very small company, but it has voice acting. And they said, you know what? We're going to have a Japanese voice option. Anyone who's going to play this game is just going to switch to Japanese voices. So why waste money trying to dub 50 different characters and hire actual voice actors? So they got their friends and family together.
Yep, yeah, I've actually heard of this. And it was just a train wreck. The voice acting sounded horrible.
It is a work of art. The best part for me still, do not rest until you see zeros. because my favorite part of that entire dub is the fact that there's this guy who is like a red leather-clad, gun-toting cool guy named Zeros, and he's the main character of like a game called Blazing Souls, I think, and they had an 8-year-old dub him. I'm not even kidding, and I think I know how that went down, because there is actually like a kid character in the game called Tonati, and I think just someone got their kid to actually voice the kid character. And I would bet money that the way it went down was the kid was like, "That's my character, Daddy. I want to be a cool character."
Yeah,
like that guy.
Just kid complaining, and then he gets the part. Yeah,
it might have been his birthday. Could have been a birthday present.
It's true, but
I can't be mad. It's the most amazing thing ever because it comes out of nowhere. You're not expecting it. Cool gun-toting guy shows up, and I'm Zeros. I work here. It's like, oh my, I can't. That game is magic. Honestly,
work of art.
It is a work of art. I honestly think the dub makes it better. And it's funny, too, because I actually did what they expected. Initially, I had started that game up, switched it to Japanese immediately, didn't even know, but a friend of mine picked it up, and he was like, "I can't play this game, the dub is so bad." And I was like, "Well, switch the voices to Japanese." And then I heard the dub, and I'm like, I'm restarting with the dub. This is better. It is the best, and the translation is so awkward.
I bet it must be. It's like I bet some words aren't even translated at all, and it just turns into some weird garbled mess.
No, the one where some words aren't even translated at all is Castle Shikigami 2. That game is also a work of art. Oh, wow. Anyway, we have to take a short break. We'll be back with something. I know before the end of the show we're going to talk about Ready Player One, and
Ooh, that was a good movie.
I'm glad someone else liked it. Yes,
It was cheesy, but it was definitely something to smile at.
We will discuss that more after the break. Until then, here's Red Cold River by Breaking Benjamin here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much. That was Hollow Life by Coast Modern here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back once again to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. I'm back with Sully over here, and we were going to talk about Ready Player One. Now, I don't normally do movie reviews on this show, and it's not really much of a review, but I did kind of want to talk about it, because it is, a little bit video game related, to say the least, and honestly, the reaction to it has been really interesting. It's been getting copious amounts of backlash from everyone who hasn't seen the movie yet, whether it's people complaining about the content of the book, or just the major complaint being that it has too many references. That it's, hey, I clapped because I knew that thing, the movie, because there's so much there. Or that they get the references wrong because, oh no, the Iron Giant has a gun. And a lot of people have been complaining about this profusely, saying the movie is just terrible because of that. How dare anyone watch it? And I finally sit down and watch it, and I'm like, okay, the references were not that bad. They made a lot more sense in context, and that was probably the most inoffensive movie I had ever seen. I admit I haven't read the book myself, but I've heard a lot of things, and yes, they've changed a number of things from the book. Certainly toned down or cut out anything that would be controversial. It's a very smoothed out movie in that respect. And the references, honestly, it was no worse than like Wreck-It Ralph. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of characters that are very familiar running around in the background, but it makes sense. Because the thing is, okay, the idea behind the movie is that it's the relatively near future, the world is terrible, and everyone escapes to a VR world known as the Oasis. And that was one of the things from the book that really could have been in there. In the book, the Oasis is basically the internet. People, like, not only is there games, but people, like, do business and go to school and pretty much do everything in the Oasis. Because in the book, the real world is even worse off than it is in the movie. in the movie, like, they don't say that's not the case, but they mostly just focus on the gaming aspects. And yeah, people show up there, they can be whoever they want to be, they do whatever they want to do, and a lot of people are running around with video game and movie avatars, and people are like, oh, that's so stupid. Dude, the Oasis kind of exists in a 0.000001 form right now with VR chat and Second Life.
Yeah,
No, go ahead.
I can understand where they're coming from a little bit.
Oh, shoot. Your mic is not turned on. There we go.
Yeah, I could see where they're coming from a bit, but you really got to say, it's like, you guys are still the ones playing VR chat and and everything, so it's, I don't want to say hypocritical, because it's still an actual concern that can be held for the movie, but everyone says it's doing really bad. It's not doing too bad on actual review sites, though. Like Rotten Tomatoes, it only has a 75%. IMBD or DB. I always mix the two last letters up.
That's all good.
It's got an 8 out of 10 on there. On Google, it's a 93% people liked this movie. The only one where it's really been doing horribly is Metacritic. Mega? I can't remember. It's
Meta.
It's Metacritic.
Meta.
And it's 62%, which still isn't horrible. See, everyone believes that for a movie to be at all even decent, it has to have like an 89 to 100. When really, I feel like a 50% is an average movie.
Yeah, and well, it's not even that. A lot of the complaints were pre-release. It's a lot of the people who haven't seen the movie. And
yeah, just jumping on a hate bandwagon.
Yeah, which seems so weird after you see the movie because it's so inoffensive, and it's very much just a fun romp. Like, I was thinking about it, and I think the way I would describe the actual main plot, it's a treasure hunt movie, so it's sort of like National Treasure or the Da Vinci Code, but admittedly with 80s pop culture, and it makes sense in context because the idea is that, okay, this virtual world's been created by this one guy, and he's dead now, and he's like, you know what, if you want to take over the virtual world for me and be its new, like, leader, essentially, you want to own this, go find
copyright.
Go find my Easter egg by finding these 3 keys. And because this is, like, the greatest economic resource in the world right now, everyone's, like, trying to get this to the point where there are people who studied this guy's life and everything that he loved, and they have a big old library of all his information. Effectively, there are nerdologists studying stupid 80s pop culture in order to try to crack this code. And it's silly, but it makes a bit of sense in context. And in general, it's just fun, you know? They're trying to figure out what the challenges are and how to complete them in order to get the 3 keys and find the Easter egg before the evil mega corporation that is almost cartoonishly evil gets them. And yeah, so it's not exactly a deep movie, but it was very much a fun movie. They did a good job with the action. I definitely had a blast watching it, and like I said, the references make sense because it is VR chat and Second Life. Like, there's actually a scene in the movie after Percival, the main character, completes the first challenge. He goes to an avatar shop and, like, he buys the holy hand grenade and stuff. And I looked at it and I'm like, this is just like a vendor mall in Second Life. Like, if you look in the background, there is a Street Fighter vendor that is either selling a Ryu avatar or a Hadouken. I'm not sure which, but I just looked at it and I'm like, I've seen this before. This is accurate. This is what people do. And I've heard, it's funny listening to people complain about it almost. Because I remember one person's like, I can be whatever character I want to, and yet I'm going to be someone else's copyrighted character. And I'm like, yeah, because that's what a lot of people do. I've seen it firsthand. It happens.
Even if most of them are Ugandan Knuckles, but
yes, the movie could have used a little more Ugandan Knuckles, but that meme came and went faster than they could put it in the movie.
Yeah, probably. The movie was probably almost done by the time it really came into the limelight. But that's not what we're here to talk about. I think it's genuinely meant to be that way. It's meant to be fun. It's something really you could take, like, your 12-year-old son to see, and he would laugh pretty much all the way through it. Because he would understand some of the references, maybe not all of them, but he would laugh at just how... Even the story itself is almost like a video game, I want to say. Like, old-timey, get the 3 keys, and go collect this. It's almost like Zelda-ish, in a way.
Yeah, and that was very much the point and idea of it. And honestly, that's one of the things that makes the movie work, I think, a little bit better than the book. I know the book was very obsessive with its 80s nostalgia. The movie works in a lot more modern things, and thus it winds up doing an even better job of feeling Second Life-ish, because it's like, yeah, you have the people with their retro 80s avatars, you have a few people with unique avatars, and you have people with, like, modern ones, because, everyone noticed tracers in there and Overwatch characters.
Yeah.
In the dance club, you can see, like, Chun-Li dancing with Blanca. One of the things that really amused me, there's someone with a Harley Quinn avatar, and you'll notice her avatar is actually lower quality than everyone else because I'm pretty certain they actually ripped it out of one of the Arkham games.
Oh,
it looks like the same model. Because her hair, like, looks shiny and off compared to everyone else, and it's the same design as the one from the Arkham games. I'm like, they just ripped the model, didn't they? It's like, I don't know if that's great or terrible.
It's genius like that really puts it together.
My favorite scene in the movie, not really a spoiler, but during the big fight at the end of the movie when they show all the people, like, VRing in the streets, they pan over and there's, like, a group of 5 10-year-olds, and it cuts from real life to the game, and all 5 of them are Master Chief. And I'm saying Master Chief instead of Spartans because all 5 of them are Master Chief. And that was beautiful. I would watch a whole movie about the Master Chief squad in the Oasis. About 5 10-year-olds, like, trying to be awesome.
You hear us, big budget movies? We want a movie that's just all about those 5 little kids.
It would be amazing, but that is my favorite scene because it just works and it makes sense. And it's great. And let's get back to the Iron Giant. Number 1, in the book, it was originally a Valkyrie from Macross, and they couldn't put that in there because, egad, Macross is a legal nightmare. Everyone owns the rights to everything, and no one owns the rights to everything. Like, even in Japan, it's like 2 or 3 different companies.
You have to pay everyone and no one.
Yeah, 2 or 3 different companies own the rights to it. In America, Harmony Gold owns some of the rights. And, like, I think some other companies own some of the rights, and they're always fighting it out, because Harmony Gold has unfortunately turned from being one of the original anime dubbing companies that introduced America to the concept of anime. They've transformed instead into a bunch of copyright trolls that will just block anything they possibly can that has even the vaguest resemblance to Macross. So that wasn't possible. Obviously, films from Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers is like, all right, so we need a nostalgic giant robot we can put in this movie. What do we have? The Iron Giant? Good, we'll do that. And the Iron Giant, they show in the film, it's made by a modder. It is not the actual Iron Giant. It is a vehicle one of the main characters is building. So, yes, it doesn't behave like the Iron Giant.
Because it's not meant to.
Because it's not meant to. It's an avatar. And I've heard people, like, argue about this because it's like, no, but it's supposed to represent the Iron Giant, and they chose this. And it's like, no, you just roll with it. It's not the Iron Giant. It's someone's avatar. None of these characters are the actual characters. They're all avatars. It's fine. And I think if people actually saw the movie, they would enjoy it a lot more. And I'm not going to say it's incredible, but it was a fun romp. I had fun with it. It's National Treasure with old movie and game references. That's not necessarily a bad thing. And again, I relate it very, very, very much to Wreck-It Ralph. It reminded me with the way it handled its references a lot of Wreck-It Ralph, and no one seemed to have a problem with that, so it kind of seems silly that they do.
It's just Wreck-It Ralph National Treasure Edition.
Yeah.
A national treasure was a national treasure of movies. I'm just saying that. I love that movie so much.
I haven't seen it myself.
Oh, they're beautiful. It's Nicolas Cage. What else can you expect?
True.
The king of B-rated movies that came after Brendan Fraser.
Yeah. So that is a thing. And I realized there is actually a 3D release for Ready Player One. I did not see it in 3D, but I am getting it in 3D when it comes to home video. I heard some people say that the problem with the 3D, of course, is that the movie is a little dark, and the 3D glasses darken it further, so that could be a bit of an issue.
Yeah.
I'm definitely getting it on 3D Blu-ray, though, for the stupidest reason, but the best reason. I want to watch the movie in 3D on my PlayStation VR.
That is an amazing idea.
That is the best reason. And because you can do that. The PlayStation VR does play 3D movies now. And some people have actually said it's the best way to do that because you don't wear glasses. It's not darkening the film. It's actually sending a separate image to each eye because it's a VR headset.
It's just like slightly moved on each one. So it gives that really good appearance of 3D that 3D glasses usually give, except maybe even better.
Yeah, that's... Like, some people are saying it's better. I haven't spent enough time watching 3D movies to say, but I can confirm it works, and I hope that you can... I would think you could probably do that on other VR headsets as long as you have a means of playing 3D Blu-rays.
Yeah, it's like...
Because I was just about to say, I'm sure you could do that on the Vive and the Oculus, and I'm like, wait a second.
Definitely not the Oculus. Maybe the Vive, if someone had enough... If someone actually, wanted to pay, like, the $1 million it would take to do something with Blu-ray.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, you'd probably need to have a Blu-ray drive on your PC, and I don't know how many PCs have a Blu-ray drive. Is that a thing?
It is a thing, actually.
Okay.
But they're expensive, and you know how expensive plus gamer... If it's not something you need, you don't need it, basically.
Yeah, that's why VR has been such a hard sell, is because it's still considered quite a bit pricey. And on that note, we are going to take another short break looking at the time, and when we get back, I will discuss all of the crazy things going down with the PlayStation VR, because, admittedly, March was a bit of a rough month for it, and then everything instantly turned around after the show last week. So, and a lot of things happened on the same day Ready Player One came out. Coincidence? Probably not. Anyway, we're kicking you back to the music with, People Say by Wu-Tang featuring Redman here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much. That was In My Blood by Shawn Mendes here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell. Welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. And as I said before the break, time to talk about some of the wacky stuff happening in the world of VR, especially the PlayStation VR. And I'm sorry about this, because I know I'm talking to a super niche, small audience with this. VR is kind of pricey, and I know a lot of people are very, very negative about it. But that's part of the reason why I talk about it, is because I think it gets passed over and ignored, and it's sort of wound up splitting off and becoming its own little subculture of gaming, because there's stuff going on there, just no one's really paying attention to it, and of course I'm completely in love with my PlayStation VR. Now, if you've been following at least the show, you'd know, around Christmas time, there was a bunch of price cuts, deals on the PlayStation VR, causing it to sell pretty well on top of Skyrim VR coming out. People loved that, and it's good. It got me to like Skyrim. I don't like the Elder Scrolls games, but I like Skyrim VR. So, that's something positive I could say there. But after Christmas, January, bit of a drought for good game releases for the PlayStation VR. But then February came, and it was the best. Good release after good release. We got Sprint Vector, we got Moss. Both of them wound up getting 9 out of 10s from a lot of outlets. Like actual normal gaming outlets, not just VR-focused ones either. On top of Knockout League and Apex Construct, and all sorts of stuff came out in February, and then Bravo Team hit. And it wound up being a gigantic embarrassment for everyone involved, whether it was Sony, Supermassive Games, the PlayStation VR. Thankfully, we had so many good VR games that people did acknowledge that Bravo Team was just a gigantic, gigantic misstep. Following that, though, was Ark Park, which a lot of people were really excited about. And then it comes out, and it winds up being even worse than Bravo Team, and even more expensive. So, okay. And then following that was Roller Coaster Tycoon Joyride, and, well, their hope was gone. Even some of the most optimistic VR fans were like, VR is over, it's all ruined, everything is bad. And I'm like, y'all get Amnesia? Like, last month, we got a bunch of great games. I still haven't bought all the great games from last month. And you're all disappointed. You got something to say? What?
No, Amnesia is amazing game. It really...
That wasn't what I was talking about.
I know, but I have to chime in. The fact that they got an Amnesia release, it's like, don't be complaining.
No, they didn't get an Amnesia release.
Oh, they didn't? Oh.
No, they just have Amnesia.
Oh.
That's what I mean, because February, we had a bunch of good games. Amnesia in VR would definitely be a thing to do, though.
Please.
But yeah, especially because, like, even people who don't like VR get how horror games are very good in VR just from the sensory deprivation angle.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, horror games are a genre that work well in VR. But possibly dangerous in VR.
That is very true. You could have people get too frightened and fall over.
Yeah.
Or
heart conditions.
Yeah.
I'm very amused by the people who have admitted to booting up Resident Evil 7 in VR and just going, nope, I'm done. It's like, that's good in a way. It's a good thing you can play that out of VR where it's less scary. But I just don't like Resident Evil, so I didn't pick that one up. But yeah, I'm glad people do like it.
I would have to say, another reason probably the PlayStation VR hasn't been getting much attention, because it's had some definite good games. Like like you told me earlier, Riggs was definitely goodish.
Goodish, as long as you get through the tutorial from hell. Because the problem with the tutorial is that it's unskippable, it's darn near an hour long, and in the second half, you get to move, and then you find out about the movement blinders. The anti-nausea movement blinders that cause nausea for a lot of people, myself included. Now, you can turn these off after you clear the tutorial. You can it's the most annoying thing, because you can access the options menu and turn off other things, just not the movement blinders until you get out of the tutorial, so you have to stomach like a half hour of trying to learn the controls of this game while trying not to go insane because of the stupid movement blinders giving you nausea or eye strain or something, because they're the dumbest thing. The motion sickness phobia in some way is definitely something that's hamstringing VR.
Yeah, it's like people don't want to feel like they're explicit. They want to feel like they're there in the moment, but they don't want to get that sense of being sick. They don't want any of that, and that's a big problem for a lot of people.
Right. Well, the problem, what I mean is, a lot of games are so afraid that people are going to get sick in them that they kind of neuter themselves with teleport movement and movement blinders and snap turning. And the thing that a lot of people have discovered with VR is that you adapt to it.
Yeah, like, you really have to get in there and jump in feet first.
Yeah,
head first in this case.
Yeah, but people get their VR legs and they get over their nausea, and then they get really annoyed. Just the more time you spend in VR, the more you get used to the weirdness, and then they start to get annoyed that so many games are neutering themselves in this way. And it's fine if it's an option. That's one of the things a lot of people are learning with VR as well. You gotta have options. Having teleport options and snap turning options for the people that it helps, that's good. But for other people, that actually...
They want to walk.
Other people want to walk. Some people actually get nausea from those things. I had a bit of an issue with snap turning where it wasn't nausea, but I would lose my sense of direction every time I turned because it instantly snap turns, and that just gets awkward. It's like, you gotta have your options. You gotta let people choose. But as I was saying, so PlayStation VR, it had a good February, rough March. Even some of the most positive people for it were like, it's all over. VR is terrible. Maybe Preda Vendetta Rising will be good. I don't know, I guess. And that guy actually got an early copy of Preda, and he was like, maybe there's some hope. And then it happened. The Wipeout VR patch dropped. Basically, if you have Wipeout Omega Collection, free patch, game is now in VR, and it is the full game, no compromise, every mode. Even on a regular PlayStation 4, the non-Pro, it still renders above 1080p and then scales it down. It super samples it. Runs silky smooth. And it is every mode, all the races, all the campaign, online, the whole shebang. It has some anti-nausea blinders, but you can turn them off. It is all the tracks. It is all the race speeds. Admittedly, there's a few tracks that, before you start them, say, no, you don't understand. This track in particular causes motion sickness. We've turned on the anti-nausea things. You can turn them off when you get to the race. And then I do. Because there is one track, like the first one I saw them do that on, is one where you sort of spiral up a building, and then when you get to the top of the building, you just plummet straight down.
I can see how that would definitely cause some people problems.
Yeah, and I was just like, nope, give me the full thing. I want to go fast. It's going to be great. And a lot of people are coming out and saying, Wipeout VR, this is the newest killer app for the PlayStation VR. It was a fantastic racing game outside of VR. Inside VR, it's super trippy. And you can switch to a back view if you want to, but the cockpit view is so amazing, and it's all the graphics. They toned down the bloom and removed the motion blur, but that's because those things just don't really work as well in VR.
Because it doesn't really happen as much as it does in video games as it does in real life.
Right. So they toned that down, and the result is just incredible. And on that same day, that was the same day Ready Player One came out, and on that day, 5 different games got patches. Gran Turismo Sport added in a time trial mode, so it was slightly less of an embarrassment. Knockout League added leaderboards. Apex Construct added new movement options, which I hear one of them was snap turning. I guess it didn't have that before. There were bug fixes for Ancient Amuletor and Honor and Duty. And on that day, the PlayStation VR got a price drop across all the different packages, everything, the bundles, everything dropped in price. All on the day Ready Player One came out. A movie about VR. Coincidence, I think not.
They're definitely preparing for a bigger influx of interest in VR after the movie.
Mm-hmm. And they had an ad for the PlayStation VR before the movie. So they knew what they were doing, and I can't blame them, because the PlayStation VR right now, even though it's still, only around 2 million sold worldwide, that's still, the best-selling VR headset, and it's kind of PlayStation's secret weapon, because you do need such a beefy machine for VR. If you're playing it on PC, the PC headsets take a bit more setup. They are better as a whole, but they take more setup, more money. They're all more expensive than the PlayStation VR.
As the resident and only guest on the show, that plays PC, I do have to say VR is definitely an expensive hobby to get into if you're looking to do it on PC. You may have more options, like with the Oculus. The Oculus is the least expensive of the bunch, basically. But if you're really wanting to get something good, you have to go with the Vive, basically. It offers you really no other choice if you want to play actual good games. You got tons of different new games, especially if I'm a bit of a horror freak myself. And so VR, if I actually, wasn't a broke college student, I would definitely try to get into VR just for the horror games and how cool they could be. But the Vive is expensive.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, we're getting price drops. And that is one of the things that is going to really cause VR to take off, because a lot of people... Here's one of the issues with VR is that we've been hearing about it for too long. Like, technically, we've only really had VR on the market for, 2 years on PC. We just passed year one of the PlayStation VR.
Yeah.
We haven't even had VR for long enough to really develop a full-fledged game for it. So I'm very much like, everyone hold your horses. But we've been hearing about VR for a half decade at least, back when they did the original Kickstarter
It's just
thing.
not as impressive. The Oculus has been out for years and years, but it hasn't really been a game.
Well, that's the thing. The Oculus has been out for years and years in a beta, not really...
development kit.
Development kits. And that's the problem, because people have been... That was what happened and what drove everyone, myself included, insane, because I had a friend who wouldn't shut up about how amazing the Oculus was going to be, and everyone kept hearing all these reports about how amazing the Oculus was going to be. It finally hits the public, and there's nothing there.
The only thing that's even actually in price range for most people is the development kit, which you're sadly not able to do anything but build and test.
Yeah. And so that's one of the things that's really hurt VR, is because people think it's been around for longer than it has been. They don't know how really early we are in here, and that it still needs some time to grow. And that's also why I'm like, don't rush out and buy a VR right yet, unless you have money to burn and are excessively curious, which I just had to know. I had to get in there and see what this was all about.
Getting the PlayStation one is fine because it's a console, mainly. And console develops a lot, I want to say higher quality games.
A little bit.
Console definitely has great high quality games, but it's not as manageable as, say, the HTC Vive, where just about anyone can come in and develop a game indie style for basically anything.
Well, that's one of the great advantages of VR, and one of the things that's really going to help it is, thankfully, all three of the headsets are similar enough that you can port between them. So a lot of people develop a game on Vive and then port it to Oculus and PlayStation VR. There are indie games, lots of indie games on PlayStation VR.
Many.
But it is a smaller number. It is more curated, because, there's over 100 PlayStation VR games, but that's one of the other things.
Most of them are small party games, mainly, just to get a feel for it.
Right. Well, the main thing is a lot of people look at the boxed releases for PlayStation VR and they think it's dead, when in reality all the best games are downloads, because they're all coming from small indie developers, and that's the thing that's keeping VR alive at all. Because the big companies, they're like, this isn't worth the time and the money and investment, it's too much of a risk. But there's a lot of people who will just develop a VR game because they think it's a trippy experience and they love it, and just for the love of VR, they'll make a small indie game, and you don't know when one of those might become the next Minecraft or Five Nights at Freddy's or something like that. And that's definitely going to be what's going to cause VR to take off, is when that one hit game comes out for VR. But it is very much
a niche.
It is niche, but it's the fact that indie devs can port their games from Oculus Rift, from Vive to Oculus Rift and PlayStation VR that's helping. And the one thing I'll say about the console quality is the fact that Sony does require a 60 FPS minimum, solid, on a regular PlayStation 4 for VR, because frame rate drops get really weird in VR, and that can cause some motion sickness. But more than that, the PlayStation VR does an interlacing trick in order to make 60 FPS look more like 120 FPS. And thus, when there are frame rate drops, because I have seen them, there are a few games that have had very brief frame rate drops that have slipped past QA.
We're looking at you, Resident Evil 7.
Actually, I'm looking more at Rec Room, which can't blame it. Rec Room is fantastic, but it's a free download, it's in beta, and sometimes, an update comes out and it causes some frame rate hiccups. But the way the frame rate hiccup looks in VR is because it's using that interlacing trick, it actually does this weird, like, double image thing that looks really awful.
Yeah, it's basically what you would see when trying to run a VR game on a normal computer. You would see because it has to send input to two different screens. So all you would see is some sort of... If you've ever seen YouTube videos of, like, recording inside of it, or trying to record the game on, like, the PC while you play in, you have to have two different things. You have to have a recording software going to the actual headset, and then you have to have... And then you might have something recording the actual gameplay, which is, if you've looked at early Oculus gameplay, you could always see the double screen.
Yeah.
There's like a split down the middle, and you would see on both sides.
Yeah, it's not quite like that, though. It's actually like the two images laid over one another. It looks...
But slightly different.
Actually, what it's more like is if you watch a 3D movie with the glasses
That's
off.
what I was about to say.
That's much closer. Like, you get a few, like, seconds of that, and it looks really janky. So it's good that Sony did put that requirement out there. But yeah, there are very much some indie games, because goodness knows that's how I'd describe Honor and Duty. I want to know if that game was made by one guy or two. And yet it really... That game is so pointless out of VR, but the implementation of the PlayStation aim controller in it is so good it saves that entire game. That and the fact that that game is cheap. But yeah, so we got, getting back on track, we got 5 games that all had updates that day, and then the following day, unfortunately it's so eclipsed by Wipeout VR that most people didn't notice. Preda Vendetta Rising came out, and oh egad, I just looked at the time. We're going to have to take a short break right about now, and then when we get back, we will we'll continue the VR discussion, I guess. So here's Dream by Crow here on 89.5 FM, KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. That was Switch by Iggy Azalea featuring Anita here on 89.5 FM, KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jel, and I'm joined by Sully still.
Still here.
And we were last talking about VR, PlayStation VR, building up steam, it using Ready Player One to try to boost sales of PlayStation VR. I get that.
Very smart, Sony.
Yeah.
You're always underestimated with your marketing strategies because you don't really market at all.
Yeah. And they've done some very bad marketing too. But
Life of Black Tiger.
Life of Black Tiger. Okay, good point. They did
Embarrassment.
Put that on their
Embarrassment.
When's Life of Black Tiger VR? But okay. So, I was going to talk about Preda Vendetta Rising, which did wind up being very nice. It is a third-person, kind of Diablo-y style game. It came out on PC a while ago. If you look it up on Steam, you'll see a lot of terrible reviews, because originally it had a really scammy pay-to-win cash shop, even though it was a paid game. They took that out, and it is still out for the PlayStation VR one. Bit on the grindy side, but it's pretty darn nice. And the game does have multiple viewpoints. You can switch to first person, but it should be played in third person. And that's one of the things that always confuses people. They see a third person game in VR and they go, why the heck is this VR? Shouldn't VR games be first person? Wouldn't this be weird or dumb? And it's actually kind of neat. The effect of playing a third person game in VR is like, imagine you're sitting in the middle of a super detailed diorama and a bunch of action figures came to life, and you controlled one of them. That's what playing a third-person game in VR is like.
That actually sounds really, really interesting.
Yeah, and that was the idea that they sort of built on with Moss. I'm not sure, have you seen anything on Moss?
I haven't looked ever since I had to sadly sell my PlayStation 4 to really build up steam in the PC community. I haven't looked as much into PlayStation's and Sony's actions, but when the PlayStation VR first released, I remember my friend got one, and I went over and I played some of them starter titles, and the starter titles were meant to be like experimental, and they were decent, but I haven't really kept up with it since. So if you could explain that.
Okay, so Moss is a third-person game, and it's one of the ones that really got a lot of praise, and they built off of that idea of when you're playing a game in third person, you know, your character kind of looks like an action figure, so they're like, okay, we're going to make the main character a mouse with a sword. So it, like, works. So it's actually like a full-scale mouse, and you're, like, playing as this guardian spirit for it in this big ol' full-size forest. And so the scale actually works on it, and that's most of what I was talking about, and a lot of people are loving it and really feeling a connection with the mouse and waiting for book 2, because come to find out it's episodic and we don't know when the next episode is going to be, if it'll happen. But people really love the game. I still need to sit down with my copy. I played the demo of it, though, and it's really nice.
Episodic games are where the money's at.
Episodic games are a pain in the butt. But yeah.
They are, but it's where the money really goes to if companies are needing to get money.
Yeah, and Moss was a very small release. But getting back to Preda, same basic thing, except it feels like you're playing with action figures, and you can switch to. It has a really zoomed out view, a kind of zoomed out view, an over the shoulder view, and a first person view. And they actually changed the controls for over the shoulder and first person, and they're not really ideal for playing the game, but it's really cool that they're there, and you can just switch between them with R3. And the game it's kind of like Diablo in VR, Diablo with action figures in a big diorama, so that's really cool. But the difference is that Diablo, you generally get lots of swarms of easy-to-kill enemies. Here, the enemies take quite a few hits, and they do kind of stupid damage. But it is really neat. Unfortunately, it did not deliver on some of its promises. The multiplayer is just boss raids. They said they're going to patch in proper multiplayer, which is supposed to also be cross-platform PC and PSVR.
Ooh, I would definitely look forward to that.
There are a few games that do that. Spark does that. Rec Room does that. Rec Room is all the VR headsets interacting at the same time, so that's wonderful. So there's a few games that do have cross-platform PC, PSVR, and they're looking at doing that for, they're supposed to be doing that for Preda. But the other thing, this was something I really want to point out, the PlayStation VR one does require VR. I mentioned this because the PC one actually doesn't require VR. You can just play it normally. And admittedly, it loses a lot of its charm, because then it's like, okay, it's just another Diablo clone, except this one, the enemies take a lot more damage, whatever. It loses a lot of its charm without VR, but it's very nice that on PC, at least you can play it out of VR, but the PlayStation VR one just won't even boot up if your PlayStation VR isn't turned on. So, I'm hoping they patch it to support non-VR. I think that would be very good to get more people in there, especially once the actual multiplayer gets released. Again, if it gets released, because you shouldn't bet on updates.
Don't trust game companies.
Yeah, especially because this game, it's been out for like a year on PC. I don't know how many updates it's gotten, and I think it's from Korea. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure. But yeah, the game's pretty fun. I'm liking it. It's certainly a lengthy game. And speaking of Korea and the Southeast Asia zone, also last week on the Hong Kong store, they released two new games that are only on there for right now. Now I need to look one up. One was called Ranch Planet and one was called Dark Legion. I picked up Dark Legion, and it's good for the price. Dark Legion it's a first-person shooter in VR. It has both teleport and smooth movement. The original PC release, its only claim to fame was kind of the reload function, because every gun had a different way it had to be reloaded. And that is definitely not, and that was back in the beta, that's definitely not in this release. Now you just shake to reload. But in its place, it has dual wielding, so that's very nice. Control scheme's a little obtuse. It's basically a bargain basement version of Farpoint. that uses just the moves. It doesn't have aim controller support. And it takes, acting's terrible. The world looks more like a mini golf course with giant mushrooms that have neon lighting below them. It's a little bit dumb, but I can't say prices on the air, but it is really, really cheap. And it has, at least it plays well enough. The iron sights on the guns work. I can point, I can shoot. It has a good variety of guns. I can dual wield the guns. And the thing that really made me happy was with the machine gun, you can dual wield it, or you can use your offhand to grab the bottom of the gun and steady it, and that did steady the stream of bullets. And I was like, that's nice. That's a nice little touch for this cheeseball game. The other game, the one I didn't pick up, is called Ranch Planet, and I think it's time to read the description, because if it wasn't so expensive, I would have bought this just to find out what it is, but I was like, no, just slightly out of my price range for a curiosity.
It's one of those games that curiosity is really what will draw people in here.
Well, that's mostly because it's on the Hong Kong store, and this description makes no sense. Allow me to read. Ranch Planet is the world's first ever WRG VR game developed and defined by Auga Tech. In the distant interstellar space, a galaxy called Ranch Planet... Okay, a galaxy called a planet. We're already off to a good start. Here lived an kind old king and his lovely daughter, Princess Rilla. However, it has lost its tranquility by a sudden misfortune. The king was critically ill, and the evil Tin Man Guard attempted to usurp the king's authority, or he will destroy the whole planet. The Princess Rilla signaled to the Guardians of the Galaxy for help. A star defense battle is about to begin. Game genre, the WRG VR game. WRG is reference to the wrestling game. The game is about strength combat. Introduction of gameplay. 1. Pull the trigger to launch the catching net, then spin the handle with the other hand to pull the net back. 2. The parties have to fight over an animal and won the score by dragging successfully. The larger the animal is, the higher the score will be. Its genre is listed as shooter. So it claims to be a wrestling game. It also claims to be the first VR wrestling game. It also says that it is a shooter. It involves rainbow-colored animals and a catching net in space. I don't know what this is. I don't know what
It sounds like a beauty is what it sounds like in all actuality.
I have no clue. I kind of want to play it because I played some weird Chinese game that was also indecipherable in VR. And let me tell you, playing an indecipherable VR game is extra magical. Because that Chinese game I played, I think they finally have a name for it in English. It's going to get an English release. It's not bad. It's kind of a tower defense game. But it took me a while to figure that out. You put on the VR headset, and you're standing there, and you look, you have no body, just in your hand you have a rocket ship with a panda with a cape on the end of it. And then you're just floating over this planet, and then all of a sudden alien spaceships start attacking, and there's animals floating in the air, and you can catch them on the end of your spaceship, and so you have like a string of animals that are automatically shoot. It made no sense, and it was beautiful because you're just lost in this world where nothing makes sense. And eventually I figured out, it's like, oh, okay, so I pick up the animals with the spaceship, and then I drop them off, and then they sit there and they shoot. No, it's tower defense. I get this now. Okay. Bit of a weird tower defense game, but okay, I get this. And I'm hoping Ranch Planet would provide the same experience, but I'm like, don't quite have enough money to just buy that for the sake of buying that.
Yeah.
Does anyone... Okay, good. Dave's Station VR got drunk and played it. Excellent. That will do. That will let me know if I need this. So that's most of what's been going on with the PlayStation VR. I'm happy to see some new games come out, and recently they just released a Planet of the Apes PlayStation VR game, and I'm hearing mixed things. Some people are saying it's really good, others are saying it's really bad. I know it has a whole lot of climbing in it. I don't know if it has enough shooting, but it definitely has enough climbing. So that seems neat, and apparently it's cheap too, but it's also short, and it's nice. In Japan, apparently they just released Brave Witches VR Operation Baba Yaga, which is a Strike Witches thing. It's apparently a quote-unquote interactive movie, and I'm so glad that I read that and watched a gameplay video instead of buying it because I would have been angry. Because looking at it, like, from a screenshot or from some of the footage, it looks like a VR version of Space Harrier, and that would make me very happy. But apparently, no, it's completely non-interactive, and all I can do is sit there and go, but this looks like a game. Why is this a game I don't get to play? Who made this, and who can I slap?
Yeah,
So
that's kind of a false advertising. Interactive movie.
I don't know what the interactivity is, but it's there, and that happened, and I'm glad I found that out. So, I believe that pretty much wraps up the show for today. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. Tune in next week for even more random video game news. Let's do just a quick check to see if anything new has been announced. No? Okay. Yeah. Hope to catch you again next week. Hope my constant rambling about VR hasn't disappointed anyone. Let's see. Coming up next, we have No Better by Major Lazer featuring Travis Scott here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening. See you next week, Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. Enjoy the music. This has been GameBabble Live.